You are listening to
The Actuarial Business Podcast.
with MJ, the fellow actuary.
Yeah, hi everyone, it's MJ and welcome back to the Actuarial Business Podcast. And it's been an interesting week. I've been doing quite a lot of pitching. As you know, I've got a startup called Pokecoin, and we're in that phase where we've graduated from the Lisk incubator, we've got some grant funding, and now we're looking to investors to get the remaining so that we can get this business up and running. But these pitch meetings, I find them fascinating because you're normally doing them with a group of other people and you only get 3 minutes. And they time it. Like you get on these Zoom call and there's this little timer in the top right-hand corner. And it's like, okay, I need to just get straight to it. Because in those 3 minutes, you need to say who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're going to do it, and basically, the huge return that you're expecting to make. So there's quite a lot of information that you need to give within these 3 minutes. And I find it very similar to actuarial exam questions, especially at the fellowship level, where you need to just get to the facts. We have that statement: 1 mark means you spend 1.8 minutes. So if it's got 5 marks, you times that by 1.8. That's the amount of time you spend on that question, and then you have to move on. Don't waffle. Time is sacred, and it's the same with this pitch. It's like this high intensity. Just throw out all this information all at once. But when you get to actuarial consulting, you realize it's different to the actuarial exams. You can actually have more time with your clients. You can have conversations. You can spend 45 minutes discussing potential solutions. And within that time, the client's also kind of like judging you to see how you come across and all these subtle things, maybe not consciously, but that is factoring into them deciding like, do we go with this person? Is this the consultant for us? And with investors, look, this also happens. If they like your pitch, a meeting is set up and a longer call is had where more probing questions can be asked. And I was thinking to myself, maybe for today's episode on the Actuarial Business Podcast, is that I almost go into this long form discussion for the Pokecoin startup. So the idea is that I can then, share this podcast with potential investors to say, look, listen, you've heard the pitch. Before we set up a call, if you're still not entirely sure of this whole business, why don't you listen to this podcast and hear why I think that bringing crypto and Pokemon together is the holy grail. And I get it. Crypto and Pokemon are both very, very nuanced. And I'll probably spend more time in this podcast talking about the nuances around Pokemon, as the potential investors most likely will know more about crypto than me. And I guess for the rest of the audience that is potentially listening, whether you're a student of actuarial science or just someone who's curious listening in, this can maybe be a bit of a peek behind the curtain, see where I'm thinking. Also, if you continue to listen to the podcast and, we talk more about business and hopefully the achievements that Pokecoin gets up to, you'll see the significance. You can be like, oh yes, that was that problem that they were thinking about. Oh, look at the solution that they've come up. Or yeah, I know this was a hurdle, and it's great to see how they got past that. So I guess in today's podcast, I want to look at, why is Pokemon a huge success? And I also want to kind of look at why humans collect things, because I think that's also sometimes when you sell people, oh, it's a Pokemon business, they can collect cards. Some people they're like, why would you want to even do that? And then also bringing in this whole idea of how NFTs are a game changer for collectors. Now, why is Pokemon a huge success? I think we can jump straight into the questions, and depending on how time's going, we can even delve, I guess, more into how the business will work, how I see it, that type of stuff. Hopefully, we get to that point. Well, we should. I think, hopefully I don't spend too much time chatting about just Pokemon. But I think it's also important to understand the passion behind this project and to understand the nuance and to see where it's coming from. Because sometimes from a generational point of view, like I look at my dad and I talk to my dad about Pokemon, it goes way over his head and he just can't wait to change the subject. Yet I spend quite a lot of time karting, and at karting, it's a sport where people start as young as 5 years old. And my go-kart has got covered in Pokemon stickers, and the kids are always there. They want to talk about, why Rayquaza is better than Charizard and Umbreon is better than, Vaporeon. And they want to have all of these intense discussions around Pokemon lore, and they're like 5-6 years old. And for me, that's one of the cool things about Pokemon is, yes, maybe not going up the generations, like my dad's generation. My dad is 70. He's got no interest in it. But the younger generation is very keen on it. And because of that, the generation just above me, so I think what they call Generation X, they're getting involved in it because they see their kids have this passion for this Pokemon stuff. And they're like, well, let me look into it. And sometimes they actually get a little bit sucked in. I've got older cousins, and she married a guy, they've had some kids, and he's now very interested in Pokemon. He buys Pokemon cards from me. He wants to chat about Pokemon cards. And, he's in his early 40s, and, he's a doctor, an anesthetist, and, we can meet up and we can chat about these crazy little creatures. So it is so cool to see Pokemon cross the generations. And I think it's going to continue. So I think when I'm 70 years old, I'm still going to be talking about Pokemon. It's going to be something I can engage in with the grandkids. And I really find that Pokemon's biggest asset is that it's this collective fantasy that doesn't only just transcend the generations, but also transcends cultures. I had the huge privilege of going to the Pokemon World Championship in Hawaii, and I flew via Japan. It's crazy. Hawaii to South Africa, the quickest way to actually get there is to go south, through the Antarctic. But of course, planes either go east or west. And I decided to go east and stop off at Japan. And when I was coming back, because I spent a week in Japan on either side of the trip, and I was wearing Pokemon memorabilia and, said World Championship and that, I had people in Japan stopping me on the streets to talk about Pokemon in English. Now, I had just been there, when I was going there, I didn't have any Pokemon clothing on. And the people, they kind of kept to themselves, fair enough. But when I came back and I was wearing Pokemon, suddenly the locals in Tokyo wanted to talk to me about Pokemon. Even when we were in Hawaii, we had some of the locals stop us and be like, listen, what's going on? Of course, it was more understandable because it was the World Championship. Pikachu had basically taken over the island. But it was so cool to see, going to this World Championship, seeing so many different countries represented. And then, like I say, spending time in Japan and having these interactions with locals that I didn't know their language, I didn't know the culture that well, but we could talk about Pokemon. And it's this collective fantasy that it's no wonder why Pokemon is the number one IP franchise according to there's some thing I saw online. It's got Hello Kitty and Snoopy and Disney and Marvel. They're all below Pokemon. Pokemon really takes that top spot. And I guess you could Google or ChatGPT nowadays, why is Pokemon such a huge success? But I remember when I was a kid, I'm maybe I don't know how old I was, 8, 7, maybe even a little bit early. This is the late 90s when my Taiwanese friend came to school. He snuck in a Game Boy, which, you weren't allowed to bring a Game Boy to school. He sneaks in this Game Boy and he starts playing Pokemon. And of course, it's all in Taiwanese. So we can't understand what's going on. He wouldn't let us play it, but he allowed us to watch. And I was just blown away by this game. Instantly fell in love, instantly wanted it. Of course, it wasn't available in any of the South African stores at the time. I would eventually get a copy from my parents' friends who were based in Europe. The problem was that it was in German. Didn't stop me though. I finished the entire game even though it was it was in a language that I didn't understand. Then, of course, the anime TV show came and the craze started and everyone started collecting the Pokemon cards at school. And I can still remember opening my first booster pack and being horribly disappointed because I got this Pokemon called Pidgeotto as my rare Pokemon in the pack. It wasn't holographic and it wasn't even the final form of that Pokemon. So I remember that's probably why the memory sticks with me because I was fairly disappointed with it. Then we had the Pokemon movie. I must have watched that movie like 10 times in the cinema, which I think at the time my parents thought I was crazy. But I started then accumulating all of those special promo cards, which today are actually worth, I mean, not a lot, but they're worth like, $10 to $20 a pop, some of these things. And like I say, I had hundreds of these promo cards. I remember in that movie, they introduced 2 new Pokemon, the one being Meryl, which is this blue Pokemon, is basically just a blue circle. And I think my mom saw the movie with me and she was like, you know what, that out of all the Pokemon, that's probably the easiest one to make a cake out of. Not realizing that for me, Pokemon was 151, all of these other Pokemon that would later come were like imposters. So I wasn't too pleased with my Meryl Pokemon cake as a child. But, I can look back now fondly and even coming back from Japan, I bought this giant Meryl plushie that was unable to fit in my luggage. So I had to like carry it around the airport in my hands. And I remember walking around the airport in Dubai because, the connecting flights. And while I've got this giant Meryl in my hand, I walk past this guy and he's in a line for another flight and he's holding like a giant Snorlax. And we just had this moment where I walked up to him and I bumped my plushie into his plushie. We didn't have to say anything. I had headphones on, he had headphones on. We looked at each other, we just smiled and we continued, on with our day. But it was this shared thing of like, I don't know who you are, what your name is, but you're also crazy like me. You also have this obsession with these Pokemon. I mean, people love to compare me to Ed Sheeran from a visual point of view, yet he too has got, I even watched that Celestial music video that he made with all the Pokemon, and it was crazy. His Game Boy was purple. My Game Boy was purple. He liked this Pokemon. It's weird how many similarities there are with that, with Ed. But it's also so cool to see, here's this guy in England who's obsessed with Pokemon. I'm here in South Africa, obsessed with Pokemon. It's like you go all over the world, and like I say, Pokemon just has this hold. And it's something, like I say, my dad's generation maybe doesn't grasp completely, but it's one of these things where it's like, wow, we really have this phenomena that is taking over. Now, interestingly for me, I mean, I could spend an entire podcast talking about my Pokemon experiences as a kid, the good and the bad. I mean, one of the bad ones was another Taiwanese, this was more my brother's Taiwanese friend. And I remember he traded a whole stack of Pokemon cards for our Charizard card. And I thought, wow, I had done the deal of the century. And I was like, these Pokemon cards, they look a little bit different. They've got a purple background instead of the blue on the back. And the contrast is a lot more, but maybe this is just what the new Pokemon cards look like. Only for them to be fakes. So yes, I traded a base set Charizard for a bunch of fakes. Not my greatest business decision, but you learn from that. You learn at a very young age as a child, like, hey, when it comes to business, you've got to be careful. You don't just sign contracts, you don't just agree, you don't just take people at good faith. You need to do your due diligence. You need to assess the risks before you make your move. So I highly encourage, if you're a parent listening to this and your kid wants to get into Pokemon, you're like, it's expensive, these creatures look a little bit evil, whatever it is. I would say, not that I'm a parent myself, but from my own personal experience, the lessons I learned as a child engaging with Pokemon were amazing. And like I say, you learn some life lessons the hard way through this card game. So yeah, I'm definitely a big proponent of it. Look, of course, I started growing out of Pokemon. When I get to high school, they had introduced new Pokemon, and for me, the game was, they had upgraded the Game Boy to that new Nintendo device. I didn't purchase it. I was focusing on schoolwork. So the Pokemon phase kind of ended for me during high school. And I would stay out of it for a very long time. I'd get more into art and philosophy. And I even made an art piece where I was essentially poking fun at people who played Pokemon. So this art piece was called Who's That Pokemon? Because in the anime show, there was, between the ad breaks, they would have this quiz, like, who's this Pokemon? You had to guess it, and they would reveal, the outline. And the art piece was kind of like making fun of the idea that as a collective society, we cared so much about this fantasy of Pokemon, and that we didn't know all these other things in life. So the art piece was me a little bit like flexing on my knowledge, because I had portraits of Greek and Roman philosophers. I had, celestial objects of the new bodies that they'd found that they'd called after Hawaiian mythology. There were drawings of Da Vinci, a map by Charles Sanders Peirce, this perfect projection of the world. And it had all of this crazy stuff going on in the background, and in the center was this Norse demon smiling at the camera, or smiling at the viewer, with this cheeky saying, "Who's that Pokemon?" And it's this idea that how my generation cared more for a fantasy than actual knowledge. This was me thinking at that time. And I created this piece in 2016, just before Pokemon Go came out, which of course would be a big craze, a big revival. And yes, I played Pokemon Go. I had been playing the previous game by Niantic called Ingress. So it wasn't too new for me per se. It was just like Ingress with a different skin on it. But I did go in and we started making apps. Like the one app was you could plot where you found the Pokemon as like a shared map feature thing. And this app got a lot of downloads. It got like hundreds and thousands of downloads. It was crashing. The ad revenue was through the roof. It was a crazy time. And I built it with this guy called Kian, who nowadays runs a very successful fintech business here in Cape Town called Stitch. But yeah, back then we were just, we were thinking, how can we make business, or how can we get ourselves more, around this Pokemon phase and that type of thing. But what started happening, and like I said, I mentioned 2016 was also the year that I started exhibiting. So I started exhibiting my art. I put on Youngblood. It's this big gallery in Bree Street here in Cape Town. I would then do it on Long Street the following year, the Art Curator in Somerset. And I was doing all of these art exhibitions. Did one also at this coffee shop, shame it's no longer, it didn't survive COVID, called Smack, also in Bree Street. And I was doing all of these exhibitions, and of course COVID came. And my immediate thought was, oh no, COVID, the galleries are all closed. How do I continue my art, nonsense that I'm doing? And I was aware of crypto. I mean, I've been aware of crypto since 2014. Rode the whole crypto kitty craze with NFTs, and that was even developing a few of my own, something called Crypto Rose, releasing smart contracts to the Ethereum blockchain. And I was aware of NFTs. And so I was like, okay, NFTs and art, yeah, maybe there's something there. So I joined this gallery called Super Rare, and they were very strict on who they allowed onto their platform. So the fact that I could show that I'd been exhibiting, for the past 4 years and these stuff, and they liked my style. And even on that video call with them, they joked that I looked like Ed Sheeran. And of course, with a name like Michael Jordan, and they're an American-based company, and I'm from South Africa, so to them, an exotic country, I got put onto this platform. Looking back, probably, I mean, if I had applied 6 months later, they would have said no to me. But I think very early on, I mean, at that stage, my YouTube channel had more followers than their Twitter account. So it was very, very early for them. So I got on, and the very first NFT that I minted was this one called Who's That Pokemon? And it sold for like 0.87 ETH or something like that, which back then wasn't like a huge amount of money, but still it was like, wow, this is money. Like, why did someone buy my digital art so quickly? Where, yes, I mean, I'd made some sales on the physical art, but I mean, on the past 4 years, I'd maybe sold 4 paintings. Here, I put this thing on, and within, 4 days, it's sold. And it really took me a long time to sit down and be like, wait, what exactly is art? And I'd had this whole conversation prior to myself around, what is money? Because, of course, I studied actuarial science, did my fellowship in finance. Money is something I'm supposed to know. And then crypto comes along and challenges the very notion of what money is. And I'd gone through this whole psychological, philosophical battle within my mind to, reform my conception of money. Now the exact same was happening with art. Art no longer had to be an image on a frame in a gallery that you hang on the wall. Art was the image. It was the message it presented. It could transcend the physical form and come into this virtual space. And it also then dawned on me that no wonder these things are selling so quickly. I'm now distributing to the entire world. When I was selling art, it was like, okay, the 50 people who walk into the gallery that look at it, maybe 5 are serious ballers. 3 of them probably don't like the work. The 2 that do, one might not be able to afford it. The other one might not have space to put it. When it's a digital NFT, you're showing it to, thousands of people. I mean, I was actually just looking at the stats the other day. I've got a self-portrait that I made as an NFT that is the 8th most viewed NFT on OpenSea of the super rare collection. And there's like 70 odd thousand NFTs made by super rare, and OpenSea is one of the biggest, NFT marketplaces. So to have my self-portrait, it means more people know me in a weird sense as an artist than as an actuary, which is crazy considering I still have this whole actuarial YouTube channel that gets a little bit of attention every now and then. So it was just crazy to see how quickly these art pieces started to sell, and it was because of the distribution. Also, the NFT removed all the friction around the art. I mean, trying to get art pieces to gallery, and then into people's houses, it was huge delivery. I mean, the one piece I think I sold 2 to America. And just trying to get the art piece there and through customs and the whole, it's not a pleasant or easy experience for the buyer. So yes, they might buy 1 or 2 art pieces, but then they're like, they're really going to think before they purchase another one. With NFTs, click, and it's done. Click the buy button, sign the MetaMask transaction, and the art piece is yours. And hey, if you don't like it, you can just relist it and sell it tomorrow. And hey, you might even get bids, set it up as an auction, to the highest bidder, you're good. Well, you try sell an art piece. You try taking a physical art piece and sell it today for the price that you bought it at a gallery. I mean, unless you got something that's really collectible, that's really gone up, which is, in the grand scheme of things, more on the unlikely side, you're not going to get that. You're going to have to sell it at a fraction of the price. So I saw NFTs revolutionize the art world. I think we all saw it. We all saw NFTs come in and revolutionize the art world, and it was crazy. I mean, I've now sold, I think, over 350 art NFTs. Like, I'm running out of artistic ideas. And these things are just as soon as you list them, they're getting sold. Of course, depending on what the market is, the prices are fluctuating. So there was a time when I was selling them for $8,000 each. Now I'm selling them for $70 each. So the prices have come down, but in a sense, they're still selling. And like I say, it was one of these things where I was like, okay, what's going on? But now remember, this is COVID. So COVID, everyone's stuck back inside, and I'm busy reading, like I say, I'm reading my philosophy. I'm reading Nietzsche, and he's got this book called Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and there's this chapter called Flies in the Marketplace, where he talks about how it is the clowns that determine the value of things, not the creators. So it's not the person who invents or builds a product, but it's the clown that determines its value. And I think you could have clown as the salesman, the influencer, the person in front of the camera. And that's, of course, where Logan Paul steps in, and he starts pumping up Pokemon cards. He starts buying stupid amounts of the classic Pokemon cards, does this live unboxing. It's this huge thing. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I'm sure I've got some Pokemon cards in storage. I pull them back out, start listing them on Facebook, and I mean, gosh, was I met with a hostile community. Like, you'd put up a Pokemon card, you're like, hey, I've got this Charizard, I'm putting it up for, say, 8,000, 5,000 Rand, whatever the amount was. Because that's what I'd seen the price had sold for on eBay, and that's why I was going to sell it. If it was only a 50 Rand card, I'm going to keep it for myself. But hey, at 5,000 Rand, let's see what happens. I traded the one for 20 fake cards, but I still had another base set Charizard up in my collection. And you get, like, people will come and they'll insult you. They're like, oh, this card's got damage. It's not worth that price. This is only worth 1,000 Rand. But I'll offer you 1,200 Rand. There, take it, or just go, because you don't know what you're doing yet. And I'm like, whoa, this is such a hostile, bullying environment. Here I am on Facebook wanting to sell my little red card with the dragon on it that I got as a kid for a price that I'd seen it sold on eBay. And look, maybe the person was right. Maybe, back then I wasn't aware of the different grading qualities of near mint to lightly played to damaged to all of these things. So they could perfectly have been correct. But the way it came across, the hostility, this aggression, and then this lowball offer, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. This is fun. Like, I want to trade more. And trading, so I first started selling the cards, and like the lessons or the experience I got from that was, people wanted me to send videos of the cards. They wanted me to take 1 million photos to get the quality. Then how do I know that it's not fake? And, you're this new person in the community. Are you a scammer? Like, it was very hostile. But like I say, it fascinated me. Now, at the same time, I'm selling these Pokemon cards for a lot of money. I'm seeing that sealed cards are the ones that you actually want to get, do well in. And I'm also making a ton of money from my art NFTs. So I take a portion of that money from the art NFTs and I buy a lot of Pokemon cards. In fact, I don't know if you guys have seen my Pokemon room, but now it is my whole second bedroom, through the bed out, and basically just covered it in Pokemon. And I mean, part of it was a financial decision. I'd seen that Pokemon prices, especially the sealed items, were increasing like 10x over a 5-year period. I'm like, that's a pretty good deal. And I've done that. I've started buying this. It was the celebration set. And it's starting to see that boxes I was buying for 2,000 Rand are now going for like 12,000 Rand. It hasn't been the full 5 years. We're coming close to that, but it's on that trajectory of going times 10. At the moment, it's times 6. And I'm buying a lot of Pokemon cards. Now, these, of course, were from the stores. And then I'd get to the stage where I would eventually open them and start collecting the cards myself. And as anyone will tell you, the best thing to do when it comes to collecting Pokemon cards is not to open sealed, but to buy from somebody else who has opened the sealed. Because there would become a premium on a sealed pack. So you look at a sealed booster pack, it's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. The cat's both dead and alive. It's only when you open the box do you collapse reality and find out the state of the cat. It's the same with the booster pack. Before you open that booster pack, it has every potential card, including the very, very rare cards. And that's the thing. Modern Pokemon cards can still fetch thousands of dollars per card, okay, if you get the rare one. So when you've got that booster pack in your hand, you could be having $1,000 card in your hand. It's only when you open it do you collapse reality and reveal, no, you actually have a card worth 20 cents, not the $1,000. It's like lottery. It's not gambling per se, in the sense that you're buying a physical object and it contains, these cards within it. So you're buying 11 cards, you're getting 11 cards. The gambling aspect is that these cards are random. You're not sure which ones you're going to get. And of course, the value's deeply determined by that. So it's kind of like gambling, but because you're getting from the Pokemon company the actual card, and it's only when you sell it to a third party that gives you the huge amount. Because Pokemon can divorce themselves from that secondary sale, they can always take a step back and be like, this isn't gambling, because it's not like, oh, we're buying back those cards for this huge amount. If Pokemon themselves were active in the secondary market and provided, say, a floor, then you could say, yeah, there's a little bit of a gambling mechanism into this. But because it's a third party, it's the secondary market, Pokemon can get away with selling the dopamine rush, this lucky packet hype, this excitement, without needing the regulatory requirements and a gambling license that comes along with it. So it's a fascinating loophole that they kind of found. But this was the thing, is you let other people experience that dopamine hit, and then when they've got doubles, when they've got surplus, you go in and you buy the cards from them. But again, the number of issues that I would have where I would buy cards from someone, and when it came to sending, they say, oh, listen, sorry, that card that you actually bought was my daughter's favorite card. So do you want me to refund you the money, or do you want to take a different card? Now, we're talking about small transactions. The whole thing of giving a stranger now my bank details, it's just like, okay, fine, give me, one of the other cards. But at the end of the day, you're like, I'm not getting what I paid for. It just dampens the whole experience. You have to wait at Postnet. Sometimes you buy it and the person takes a week before they deliver it, or all these things, or actually somebody else bought it before you. And there was just so much drama. To put it in a slow, there's just so much drama around the buying and selling of Pokemon cards. And now at the same time, we're seeing NFT profile pictures start coming up, and they're starting to go for stupid amounts of money. I remember going to my dad. I said to my dad, listen, Dad, I'm like, for me, I don't want to spend $5,000 on a picture of a monkey. But I think you should. I think you should spend $5,000 on a picture of a monkey. I said, for me, it just, it feels a little bit crazy to do, but for you, maybe give it a go. It can be a bit of a lach to your friends. You can say, hey guys, I didn't buy Bitcoin. I bought this Bored Ape Yacht Club. And I said to my dad, I think you should buy this monkey at $5,000. He's like, it's just a JPEG. I'm like, yeah, just buy it. Buy it though. You'll get airdrops and all these, which went all over his head. But he doesn't do it. And he says, Michael, I spent so much money on your education. You're supposed to be this investment guru. You're supposed to have studied finance. And now you're telling me to buy this monkey. Why don't you buy the monkey? And again, I just couldn't bring myself to spend $5,000 on a monkey, because in my mind I was thinking, gosh, with $5,000, I could buy a lot of Pokemon cards. I would rather spend that $5,000 on really cool Pokemon cards than this monkey. And I'm amassing quite a bit of a collective, collection in my portfolio. But my dad doesn't really have anything collectible. Yeah, he's got, maybe like a Rolex watch and a collectible car, but he doesn't delve into stamps or into art or into these type of things. So new technology, maybe you should give it a go. Anyway, shouts at me for even suggesting it. And then, of course, Bored Ape Yacht Club goes through the roof, and the prices go from $5,000 to $50,000 and up and beyond. And I remember then going to my dad and saying, Dad, look what these monkeys are doing. Like, I told you should have bought this thing. It was like I told you so moment. And he looks at me, he's like, Michael, I didn't spend so much money on your education to learn about finance investing, and you couldn't persuade me properly to buy this investment. So he shouts at me again for not persuading him enough. But it's crazy to see these NFTs, profile pictures getting traded for such a huge amounts. And so, of course, I start thinking, I'm like, well, yeah, because there's no friction like with the Pokemon. With Pokemon, there's drama, there's, oh my gosh, there's delivery costs, there's, oh, please send me 50 images to make sure it's not a fake, all of that kind of stuff. Bored Ape Yacht Club, you make sure that it's from that, the correct address that it got minted from, then you can guarantee that it's legit. You put in your ETH bid, or you accept the sale price, the deal goes through. It's just like the art. You don't have to engage. There's no back and forth buyer and seller communication, which is further complicated by language barriers and cultural customs and all that kind of stuff. No, it's instant. You give me the money, I get the cash, you get the JPEG, deal done. And you can quickly list it, and for a quick profit, you can buy more, you can sell. You don't have to worry about storage, because these things are just, in this virtual space. So, of course, it dawned on me why these things were doing well, why people were buying them. Then, of course, people started buying or minting a whole bunch of, there's the penguins and Pudgy Penguin, which there's that airdrop. If you guys have got old Ethereum address, I know, quick detach, go check to see if you got a Pudgy airdrop. But coming back to the whole thing, I got it. I understood why NFTs were now the future. And so I started going in and doing collaborations. I did something especially with these Instagram models. The one lady was on that Netflix show, Too Hot to Handle. I said, why are you posting your pictures on Instagram? You could turn these things into NFTs. And she'd be like, but why would anybody want to own it? And I explained, well, just like with the whole art process, a collector feels like they become part of the narrative by buying an art piece. So just with an art piece, like, we can all look at the Mona Lisa, we can all say, oh, that's a nice painting, and move on. But when you purchase it, you become part of that art piece's narrative. It's like, oh, this piece now belongs to Michael. It's, and you're now part of this grand story that includes Da Vinci, the Louvre, and whoever else collected this piece as well. And the pleasure that you derive from this inclusion, this fulfillment of purpose, or whatever you want to call it, is worth millions and millions to people who have everything else in their life. And I was explaining this to the NFT, this whole thing behind NFTs to this model, and she got it. She's like, okay, cool. So it's another way for her fans to engage with her, or to be part of her story, or to show that they are a super fan. And we sold her NFT for, I think it was like $3,000 that her first, and it was a photo that she had already been taken. And so we got that's actually how I got through to her. Was this photographer had approached me to learn more about NFTs, and he was showing me his work, and I was like, wait, I know that person out there on Netflix. And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, if you want to sell NFTs, you need like a celebrity aspect, because we started going into that. It was like, what makes an NFT sell? What do you need? And one of the things behind it was an authority, this concept of an authority. So with Pokemon cards, it's Nintendo. Nintendo is the authority behind the cards. I mean, the Ethereum blockchain itself gave a lot of that authority, especially in the early days. And that's why I think the layer 2 NFTs didn't, especially just the purely collectible ones, didn't catch on as well, because it had to be like on Ethereum, especially back in the day. Or I guess Solana's also kind of got itself in there, and with the Bitcoin NFTs also, it was like, oh, this is the authority of the chain. But Bored Ape also had Yoga Labs as that authority, and we could spend quite a bit of time going through what an NFT or what anything needs in order to meet the criteria of being collectible. And this was something, I got my mom's stamp collection. So I got my mom's stamp collection, and I was going through stamps, and I was going through art, and I was going through, my dad does like I say, he does like watches. He doesn't have a huge collection. He's just got, the one Daytona. But we watch a lot of watch videos on YouTube. And so looking at the watch world, looking at stamps, looking at Pokemon, looking at art, I was like, what do these things have in common to make them collectible? And at the same time, I'm also asking myself, why do people collect? Like, what is this thing in the back of our mind that actually drives us to collect? Because yes, Pokemon you can play the game with, and I get it, that's cool. But why do I have this urge to complete sets, to collect Pokemon cards that I'm not even going to play with, like the max rarities and these type of things? And then I realized, no, because as a species, it's actually one of our collective activities that has made our species so successful. I mean, if we take a bigger picture of it, it's this whole idea of museums. Why do we have museums? Why do we have libraries? Humanity as a collective hive species, in a weird sense, has this notion of preserving the past, because it understands that by preserving the past, it can be beneficial for our future. So with museums, we have these artifacts, libraries, we have these ancient books, and it's this idea that there's a lot of value to it. Now, me as an individual, gosh, I'm very rarely gonna find a an artifact. I'm not going to be an archaeologist and Indiana Jones into a tomb and find some secret jewel or ancient sculpture or whatever like that. I'm probably never going to have that experience or opportunity in my life, but there still is a desire I don't think it's in all of us. And that's the thing. I don't think that's why you can explain Pokemon to some people. It's like, this is the dumbest, most irrational thing ever. But to others, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Because I think it's only in some of us that we're collectors. Some of us are the knowledge keepers for our society, for our culture, for our species. And so some of us want to participate in this collecting phenomena. But for many of us, it doesn't make sense to dedicate our entire life career to going into archaeology or curating and that type of thing. So trading cards, specifically something like Pokemon, where already, as I spoke about earlier, there is this collective, imagination that transcends cultures and generations. So we now think, oh, Pokemon important. I must preserve this cards. I must preserve this culture so that the next generation can benefit from it. Now, I think this is all happening unconsciously. And I do that. I use the word unconscious and not the word subconscious, because subconscious makes it assume that this non-consciousness is beneath us. And I don't necessarily think it's beneath us. It's kind of like more around us. When I say me, you can pick up I've been reading Jungian, and because of course he preferred the term unconscious to subconscious. But there is something going on in the back of our mind. Something's happening in the psychology that is driving us to collect. And I think that's why some people come in and collect Pokemon cards. Now you add on top of that the dopamine rush that you get from opening these things. You add on it now, for specifically my generation, the nostalgia boost. You add on it the community that surrounds this, and the idea that you can now talk to people cross cultures, cross generation. You start adding on all of these benefits, and you realize that Pokemon, it's the perfect storm. It is the ultimate thing to collect because it's accessible. Like I say, it's community, it's cross-cultural, and especially in this world that's becoming so global, it's so cool to have something that brings us together. I mean, I remember going to ETH Denver, and I wore little Pokemon pins, and going around and talking to people, and people would sometimes stop me and they'd be like, oh, you like Pokemon? Look at the background of my phone. It's got Pokemon. Now, this is what we're doing in the physical world. We're not even showing the cards. I've got a Pokemon pin. She's got a Pokemon wallpaper. But it's this idea that we're both into Pokemon that we can start chatting. Now imagine if we have Pokemon NFTs. A lot of our communication now starts happening online. And I'm on, want to do some business, and someone just DMs me on Twitter, and I'm like, who's this person? Who's this person? They say they're interested in Pokemon. And I go and I can look and I can see, oh gosh, they have this entire collection of Charizards and Eevees and whatnot. Okay, this person has successfully signaled to me that they are into Pokemon. So they want to chat Pokemon, or they want to organize a match, or whatever the situation is. Let's do it. Let's talk. So there is going to be that huge aspect. But I may be jumping the gun, because how did I get from art and just collecting Pokemon to now wanting to build an NFT platform for Pokemon cards? So as I said, I'm rubbing shoulders with celebrities and all of these things because of my NFTs. They're selling, they're doing well. I'm speaking at various conferences about NFTs. And so I get invited to a party where I'm introduced as an artist. Can you imagine? Here I am, I go to this party, and I don't know, I didn't want to even go to the party. I just went like last minute. So I went in like a hoodie. So I really, imagine going to like one of these formal parties and I'm dressed up in a hoodie, hadn't shaved in a while, looking a little bit unkempt because, I do a lot of my work behind a screen most of the time. But I was like, let me just get out the house for a bit. And I'm sitting at a table, and these two guys are discussing how COVID is going to just destroy the American economy. Like, this is the end of America. So this party was September 2021, maybe a little bit before. So like lockdown, had kind of like eased a bit, but COVID was still on everyone's mind. So these two guys were like engaged in this very discussion, and they were agreeing with each other. And I would find out that one was ex-Deutsche Bank and the other had his MBA or PhD or something in economics. And they're going in, and of course, I jump in and I say, no, COVID's going to strengthen the American economy. And they look at me as if I had insulted them. You've got these two financial intellectuals, and now this scruffy-looking artist has come in and told them that not only does he disagree, that he completely doesn't. Sorry, I'm twisting my words here. It's not that I disagreed with their statement, but I was putting forth the exact opposite, that COVID was going to strengthen it. And of course, I'd come in and I justify. I say, COVID, everyone's running to assets that have got a very, very low risk. What is the assets that's got the lowest risk? Cash. Who owns cash? It's basically the US dollar, because all other currencies are kind of pegged to that. Well, not, we measure them in that kind of value, and other economies, will kind of suffer. But America, as the international reserve currency, they can print more dollars, and by printing more dollars, they can, settle whatever debts, they can do expansions, they can do bailouts, they can do all of these kind of things. And more countries are going to rush, or investors are going to rush to the US dollar. And of course, they're going to be printing more and more of it. So this is going to really make America wealthier. Now, whether I was right or whether I was wrong, I was probably wrong. I'm a one or two beers down, and I'm just making conversation for the sake of making conversation. So don't challenge me on whether COVID made America richer, because, like I say, I was probably wrong. But I think the mere fact that I was able to intellectually engage with these two individuals, they were very intrigued, because they looked at me and they said, but wait, aren't you just an artist? So I said, no, I'm using NFTs to sell my art, but, I've done this NFT thing with these Instagram models. And I'm like, what? In fact, I actually think Instagram is going to start using NFTs everywhere. I was like, think about it. If I've got a little hobby page or any arts and crafts, or basically any Instagram page that I'm, for the people, if I put my images up as NFTs and I sell them for small amounts, $10, $20, I take that amount, I buy better equipment, better cameras, better makeup, better locations. I can use that money to generate better, quality content for Instagram, and I can release more NFTs, which I can sell, and I can keep kind of doing this. And my follower base will grow, and as the follower base will grow, there might be a desire or an interest in the early NFTs. So the people who put money in early will be able to essentially reap a reward, and you create this whole new creator economy where you can decentralize the investing, because a whole bunch of people buying different investments into these NFTs, and if this page is successful, they can recuperate a profit. And you could even find this could become some people's hobbies, is to look for small creators that they think has got potential in buying their NFTs. And we could kickstart a whole new creator economy that isn't based around annoying interruptive ads. And they look at me and they're like, wow, that's like, they're like, we're talking to Instagram right now. And I was like, wow, who are you guys? They're like, one guy's like, well, I'm one of the co-founders of Polygon. I was like, what's Polygon? Because you got to remember, for me, I was dealing, like I say, Ethereum, Bitcoin. I liked Litecoin and all these things. Layer 2s, my knowledge at this point was a little rusty. Even though I was in crypto and I was doing stuff on Ethereum, I hadn't really come across layer 2s. And so they say, listen here, we want to offer you a job. They give me their card. They're like, first they said, what, I'm like, oh no, I'm an actuary and all this stuff. They're like, we're starting this whole enterprise division. We want you to be our first hire. You understand this NFTs. We want you to come and explain this to big corporates and that kind of stuff. Come join our company. I remember I took the card, didn't think anything of it. In fact, I think I lost the card, went back home, played with my Pokemon cards, whatever. And my friend who had organized this whole party, she calls me up. She's like, Michael, they're asking why you haven't called them back. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. You've got to grab it with both hands. So of course I called in, gave quite an inflated salary expectation, they said, cool, just have one or two more interviews with some of the other founders and HR and all that kind of stuff, and let's see what happens. And it was in those meetings, I think it was with the lady from HR. She was based in Japan, and she said, why NFTs? Like, what makes you so fascinated about NFTs? And I explained to her all the problems I was having with trading Pokemon cards. And I said, if you take away, this technology takes away a lot of that friction. So I see the future of trading and collecting as being NFTs. Made this whole case, and of course, they hired me, sent me to a whole bunch of conferences around the world. And the one thing I kept saying to them was, we need to talk to Pokemon. Let's make Pokemon NFTs. I said, imagine if Pokemon released a whole bunch of Pokeballs. So everyone goes in and you buy a Pokeball, and then the Pokeball gets revealed to be a specific Pokemon. And I say, you could have them of one of ones, and these things will trade at insane amounts. Like, to own the first edition NFT Pikachu issued by Pokemon, it's going to be off the charts. So they said, well, listen here, our Japanese team is already engaging with Polygon. So when I was in Korea for Korean Blockchain Week, I met with the Japanese team, and I was like, guys, like, how can I help? Where can I assist? This is critical. We need to get this thing done. And their attitude was like, no, don't worry, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We've had a few meetings, but they must come to us. We don't want to look too desperate. Pokemon must come to us. And they're like, if anything, Pokemon is looking at other chains as well. They're thinking about all this kind of stuff, but we'll wait for them to come to us. And I was like, no, and I don't know if this is the difference between how South Africans do business to how the rest of the world does business, but I was like, no, this is critical. We need to get this project done and dusted. And of course, nothing would have come from it. And I was told, listen, that's for Team Japan. You're in Europe. So who I actually ended up chatting to on the one day was the CEO of Ferrari. And look, I mean, the reason why I was talking to the CEO of Ferrari was, I think Ferrari wanted us to be the sponsor on the car, and we were wanting to do various systems and whatnot for Ferrari on the back end, so very serious business stuff. But we jump on the call, and I'm on the call before Sandeep, the CEO of Polygon, joins. So I'm there a little bit early, and the Ferrari team, they look in the background of my wall, and it's all these Pokemon cards, and they're like, what's that? And I'm like, well, we're going to be talking a little bit about NFTs and stuff, so I might as well, before Sandeep joins the call, these are NFTs, you can relate them to Pokemon cards. They've got multiple parameters that determine its value, and there can be an image and all of these different stats, and it's different to a fungible token that tends to be based on, a uniform single stat. And this guy was like, oh my gosh, my previous business, we made a lot of money with a partnership with Pokemon, and my kids love it, and all that. And listen, Sandeep eventually joined the call, and I don't think Ferrari and Polygon went forward, because it was around that time that I got offered another job to be a capital actuary for a decentralized insurance platform on Algorand, which I was very interested in doing, because Polygon had gone from a startup to a corporate very, very quickly, and I did not want to work in a corporate environment. There's just all that unnecessariness around corporate, all the red tape, where the startup's a lot more vibrant. Of course, I joined the startup, and it was the exact opposite of Polygon. Polygon I'd seen go from this very, very small team of around 100 people to past 1,000, to now I was joining a team that had 20 people, and I was the last one to jump ship. I was the last employee. So with Polygon, especially on the enterprise, I was the first employee, and with this other startup, I was their last employee. So it was quite an interesting mirroring the journey. But it was, that CEO of the new company, they kind of got me in on a lot of the pitch meetings, and I could see a lot of them talking to various investors, and they kept putting, me. It wasn't like, oh, here's Michael, he's an actuary. It was like, no, here's Michael, he's ex-Polygon. And I was like, what? That is such a weird credential to flex over being an actuary. But I kind of found that internationally, outside of the British, Commonwealth countries, not many people are too familiar with what an actuary does. Even in America, actuaries it's a little bit obscure. It's like, what exactly do these people do? Like, do they just do maths? Do they predict the future? Do they just work for insurance companies? Like, what exactly is it that they do? But yeah, that's kind of how my journey with Polygon ended. And after this thing with the startup, I got into AI, absolutely love AI. I was making theology content with it, grew a YouTube channel, another YouTube channel, past 100,000 subscribers, haven't really attended to it since then. So it's dipped, I think it's down now to 99,000. So we've lost that 100,000 mark, but it was enough to get that cool YouTube plaque and that. And the investor I had on that front was paying small amounts of Bitcoin every month. And it was like, okay, because we were so early, it was like, we're going to evaluate each month. And it was happening at the time where Bitcoin went through the roof. And this guy thought, hey, if I just held on to Bitcoin, it would have been a better investment than this AI startup. So that funding was kind of pulled. And it got pulled at a stage when I started playing Pokemon more competitively. So while this is all happening, I want to, because it took a lot of work to qualify for this Pokemon World Championships. But just before I left, I got this email saying, hey, CV Labs are doing this thing with Lisk. And again, I didn't know who Lisk was. But I knew who CV Labs were because when I was working with Polygon, they were one of the partners, the local partners here in South Africa that we had done some events and networking and whatnot with. So I knew, that's why I was on their email list. I got this email, Lisk is doing this incubator program. If anyone wants to have ideas, they can submit. And I'd always been thinking about a business around this hobby of Pokemon. From grading cards to opening up a store to hosting tournaments, but there wasn't that silver bullet idea to go through. So this incubator comes up and I thought, you know what, let me just throw it out there as this idea. Pokemon cards as an NFT marketplace. And that essentially, that application would be accepted. And I'm in Japan and Hawaii playing Pokemon cards while this incubation program is happening. So with the time zone, it was a little different. Fortunately, my brother's a chartered accountant, and I kind of convinced him to leave his corporate job and do something with me. Either consult, or I was like, let's have a go at doing a startup. So he joins in and he's happy to take on I said, also join these lectures in the beginning. They'll explain crypto, get you up to speed where I am. And he did a lot of the early assignments, enough for us to get accepted into Block 2. Fortunately, with Block 2, I was back into South Africa. But by getting through Block 1, they gave us an initial grant of $4,000, which we used to go to a Pokemon tournament in Latin America. Because when I was in Hawaii and Japan, I was talking to store owners about this whole NFT idea. They were super keen, happy to jump on board. And we saw, like, when you do Google searches, when you do any analysis, Pokemon's big in South America. Like, it is huge. Like, the current world champion is from there. And, we're now in a situation where Pokemon is releasing a new language for the Pokemon cards, and it's Latin Spanish. So it's Spanish for the people in Argentina, Chile, Venezuela, Colombia, and so forth. So it was a big market to go to. There was a big international championship happening at the time. And it was a great meeting because we went to store owners in Argentina and Brazil, also very, very excited to come on to our idea. And I think maybe now I should start talking about the idea. We're like an hour into this, so I'm going to have a quick little pause, grab something to drink, maybe a coffee, and then I'm going to come back and explain what exactly this idea is. So we're going to jump back straight away. But yeah, let me quickly have a drink, and thank you so much for listening so far. I know it's been a 1 hour preamble, and you can see this is not something you can cover in a 3-minute pitch. But let me grab something to drink, and I'll be right back. And we're back for part 2 of this very long podcast. I was actually hoping to rest my voice, and when I was having my coffee between these two segments, when I actually got a call from my old investor, the guy who was funding the AI business with Bitcoin. And it was interesting because he's not a venture capitalist in his own mind. So he's actually a liquidity provider for the venture capitalist. And that was the whole point of his phone call, was he was calling to say, hey, Mike, long time no chat, but the VC that I fund, they need some help regarding AI. Can you go in and chat to them? Of course, I was like, yeah, sure thing. And then, we caught up on some of the latest developments happening in AI. So another 30-minute conversation. Of course, fortunately, I didn't speak for the full 30 minutes. It was a little 50-50. But it's great because, of course, I can now go to this venture capitalist, help them out with some AI, and potentially even share with them this podcast and say, hey guys, listen to this to get more of this business idea that we're building. But yeah, having said that, let's jump back into Pokecoin. I actually, people probably thinking like, oh, why haven't you asked this guy to be another investor? Did the AI funding? Why doesn't he come in on Pokecoin? He's got a bit of a Bitcoin portfolio. Isn't he perfect? I actually haven't asked him. The reason being is that in the past he's told me that when it comes to crypto, Bitcoin maximist, and AI is his love child at the moment. In fact, that's even how that whole investment came about. Was I was talking to him on behalf of another client who was helping, asked me to help them raise some funding, a Korean business. And I said, well, I know this guy, let's chat to him. And I was busy explaining their whole protocol and all that. He says, listen, I like Bitcoin and I like AI. So I said to him, well, if I come to you with an AI business idea, will you entertain that? And he was like, yeah, I'd be open to that. So like I said, theology is a big passion of mine. Wanted to create some religious content, generated something for him. He said, listen, I'm not a religious man myself, but my driver is. And his driver, guy from Kenya, read some of the content that ChatGPT had made, and he said, boss, this is some of the best stuff I've ever written. And, he was sold on it, and we went to, I think we did that for 6-7 months. And then, like I say, he's a businessman at the end of the day. So with Bitcoin prices going through the roof, he kind of reverted to saying, let me just hold on to, because I think Bitcoin was, what was Bitcoin? It was, I think it was like around, it was $60,000, or maybe potentially could have even have been less. And now we've surpassed that $100,000 mark. But with that said, let's jump into Pokecoin, because what exactly are we doing? In the first part of this whole podcast, we spoke about Pokemon as a brand, and we spoke about NFTs as being a mechanism that reduces a lot of the friction and risks around physical trading. And so there's this holy grail of bringing the two together to create something that, I think will potentially be huge. And I mean, that's one of the things that we do in the pitch deck. We kind of start off by saying this market size is already big. I think a lot of people think, oh, Pokemon, it's a kid's game. Oh, who cares? But when they hear that there are 75 billion Pokemon cards that have been printed, and we've got our platform where we're aiming to make around, a couple of cents per card that gets uploaded, plus 2% on all trade volume on the secondary market, they suddenly realize, wait, this could be $1 billion business. If they're making sense on 75 billion, there's still a potential billion in there, and then 2% on trade volume, that's a bit of an ongoing amount as well. So I think that's the first thing that I try to communicate in the pitch deck, is that this market size is big. And then even later on in the pitch deck, I kind of speak about, and we've spoken about this, I think in the first episode of this whole Actuarial podcast, was when you digitize something, you expand the market even more. So if there's 100 collectors for something physical, once you make it virtual, you'll have 10,000 collectors, just because it's so much easier to access and to participate. And the distribution of the NFT and crypto that really makes a project like this feasible. Also, this is a project that's only really feasible now with layer 2s. You try to build this on the Ethereum mainnet, because a lot of the Pokemon cards are going to be trading at like around $1, potentially even less. And on Ethereum, when you mint an NFT, just to mint an NFT, you're sometimes looking at $3 now. And that's when gas fees are low. You're paying like another $5 to transfer the thing. So if the actual NFT that you're trying to sell is only $1, the friction costs on Ethereum are huge. But when you come to these layer 2s such as Polygon and Lisk, that cost gets reduced drastically. And that's kind of what I like about Lisk, is the transaction fees are very, very low. Because someone might say, well, wait, Michael, you've received this grant money, but it's kind of like a golden handcuff. You've got the exclusivity of Lisk for a year, and it's it doesn't have as many users as Ethereum. And there's definitely merit in that argument, and it's something that we're conscious of. But we need to be on a layer 2. We need to be on a layer 2 because of the lower transaction costs. And with something like this, it makes sense to have everything built on one layer 2. And for a user, for them to if they can go from Ethereum to Polygon, they have the expertise and knowledge to go from Ethereum to any other layer 2. So I think you just have to be on any layer 2, and anyone who can get into a layer 2, who knows how to bridge and do all these things, can get to any of the other ones. So once you go layer 2, I don't think it matters which layer 2 you actually end up with. So I'm happy to go on with Lisk. Also, what's super cool with Lisk at the moment is that airdrop that they're doing. I also made a video about that, on how you can participate in it. And I see quite a few already have, because of course I'm getting the numbers on my side. Everyone who uses that reference code, I get a few bonus points as well. And that's actually been quite a significant number. So thank you to everyone who's been joining it, and hopefully that airdrop is worth the while. It's an unexpected payment amount. But part of the grant system with Lisk is that they'll say, hey, we'll make it as an activity for people to do. They'll get points for the airdrop if they engage with your application. And I think that could be huge, because people then will come in and engage with us, will take a look, because they're getting rewarded for doing so. And there's like 250,000 people participating on the Lisk airdrop. Let's say of that 250,000, only 100,000 come and check out the website. And of that 100,000, only 10,000 think it's cool. And of that 10,000, only 2,000 decide to stick around. That's 2,000 users that you can bootstrap a community with numbers like that. So, I mean, because Polygon at the moment have also sent out an email saying, hey, there's this huge grant. We're looking for meme kind of coin projects. This Pokecoin idea, especially with my relationships with Polygon, would be a very good alternative. Look, and maybe if they'd issued the two emails at the exact same time, I might have submitted with Polygon, because I just know it a bit better. But looking back now, it's better to have gone with Lisk because of this airdrop marketing boost that we're potentially going to get. And that's actually what we want to do with our early users, is we want to be super generous with the token. One of the things I saw while I was at Polygon is the more generous you are with your airdrop, the more rewarding it is for your application. So we want to be super, super generous with a token, give it to as many users as possible. Maybe everyone who's got any activity on Lisk, just give them a token. Anybody who joins our wait list, give them token, give token, give token, give token. But then you might say, but wait, Michael, if you flood the market with this supply, aren't people going to just dump it and kill your token's value? And I agree. So we have a mechanism. So the idea is that we give out this token, we call it the colorless token, because one of the things with Pokemon, and I know I jump around quite a bit, but one of the things with Pokemon is you've got, I think there's like 9 energy types. And one of the non-energy types, well, they call it the colorless energy type. And these are your Pokemon like Eevee. Eevee is a non-colorless, it's a colorless Pokemon that doesn't have an energy type. And then if you give Eevee electricity, it becomes Jolteon, which is an electric type. If you give it the Water Stone, it becomes Vaporeon, which is a Water Stone, Flareon, the Fire one, and all of these type of things. So Eevee is quite a nice Pokemon to illustrate the different energy. And essentially, we've tokenized each of these energies. So we start off with colors. Everyone gets colorless. And then with colorless, they can take those tokens and they can purchase an energy NFT. So let's say they buy the fire NFT. They stake that fire NFT and now they get fire tokens. Once they get the fire tokens, they then purchase, say, the water NFT. And then that releases the water tokens. And then they claim that and they mint another NFT, let's say the psychic energy NFT, stake that, they get the psychic tokens. And essentially they go through this program until they get to the actual Pokecoin, which is what is used on the platform. But the reason for going through this jump and this hoops is not only have we gamified it in a way, so, and I want to keep the game a little bit of a secret for users to explore it themselves, is because is the best path to go buying the fire energy, the water energy, the grass energy, or is it better to purchase the psychic one, the rock one, and then, there's different paths that people can take. So there's a bit of a game element to it, which I think will be quite fun. But two, we're also anticipating getting a lot of the Pokemon community into crypto, and we understand that this might be one of the first applications that they're ever interacting with. So before it comes to our actual marketplace, I want my users to get familiar with doing crypto transactions. So you've received a token, spend this token on an NFT. Okay, you've got an NFT now, stake that NFT. After some time, you can claim some more tokens. We can repeat that kind of process. So it's a little bit of like an in-game tutorial on how to do crypto transactions with a token that effectively is worthless. It's this worthless token. It's only after time and interaction that it matures to the actual Pokecoin token, which will be used on our platform. So this is this elaborate airdrop thing that we've got going. And like I said, we want to be super generous with the colorless token, give it to any and everyone. If someone wants to double up accounts, go for it. Cool. Because through the whole interacting and staking and doing all of that kind of stuff, and because it's a little bit gamified, shame, bots will get blown up. Unless someone creates a very intelligent AI-driven bot, which I'm not going to dismiss entirely, but it's not like, you could just bot your way into this thing. That gamification also ensures that we're dealing with a human user. And then finally you get our Pokecoin. Well, you finally get to the way you go through all the energies, and then at the end you can mint, we call it the dragon NFT. Because dragon in the Pokemon card game, there isn't the dragon energy. It's a mix of all the other ones, but the dragon Pokemon tend to be more powerful but require energy from the different sets in order to do their attacks. So once you get this dragon NFT, you can either stake it and get Pokecoin, like 1 Pokecoin per day, or you can take that dragon NFT and you can stake it to get the platform token. And once we have all the trade volume happening and we start generating all of these fees, we will take a portion of those fees and buy back this dragon token. So once you get to the dragon NFT, you've got two choices. Do I get the Pokecoin and actually start getting Pokemon cards? Because Pokecoin can open virtual packs that actually have the Pokemon NFTs, and I can start collecting and playing the game. And that's what we expect most of the users and collectors to do. Or are you like, listen here, I actually want to be a bit of an investor in this platform. I'm going to get the dragon token. If this project does really, really well, there's going to be buying pressure on this token. So these tokens are expected to appreciate if there is considerable amount of activity. Also, we might make that platform token our governance token, in the sense that if we're going to make decisions and that, people can kind of vote. We're also going to use that token as a bit of an incentive when we interact with our store owners, because we're not just making an NFT marketplace. It's not just like, I went to Third Web, I got the NFT marketplace template, great, let's get to business. It's like, no. Because our NFTs are linked to a physical asset, we need a physical global distribution that allows for submission and redemption of cards. Now, fortunately, that network already exists in the form of all of these Pokemon stores around the world that tend to be privately owned. And that's a lot better than trying to deal with, let's say, GameStop or something like that, where, there's corporate hurdles and a lot of back and forth. With these hobby stores that I was speaking to in Argentina and in Tokyo and in Brazil, They're privately owned. The guy behind the counter tends to be the guy who owns it. He's the decision maker. You convince him to join the program and you're in. There isn't a board, there isn't a committee, and these stores, like I say, they exist all around the world, and they're already dealing in Pokemon cards, and they're hosting Pokemon competitions. So I'll only deal with the store that has been Pokemon Play approved. That means Pokemon Company themselves have done the due diligence on the store, have said, okay, they meet specific criteria, they are a purchaser of our stock, and like I say, they host these regular tournaments to the Pokemon community. And I've tried to see, okay, how do I become myself a Pokemon Play store? And it's quite a lot of requirements and compliance that one needs to go through. So the fact that Pokemon has already done that on all of these stores, and we're able to identify who those stores are and verify it on the Pokemon website, we already know who we need to talk to in each of these different countries. In fact, Pokemon has even got the store owners' email addresses on all of their websites for you to contact them. So it is fairly straightforward to pick up the phone send an email and say, hey, I'm going to be in your country, or hey, should we just even have a Zoom meeting? Let's talk about Pokemon. This is this idea that I have. And one of the things I want to do with the store owners is as much volume of Pokemon cards that we get through them, I want to compensate them with this platform token, which we're going to call the Dragon token. So they will get Dragon token. So the more volume of Pokemon cards they bring to us, the more Dragon token they get. Effectively, what that means is this token, we're decentralizing the governance or the ownership. I mean, ownership, legally, it's a bit of a strange term to throw out there. Essentially, we're making them profit-sharing partners, because if the platform does very, very well, that Dragon token that we issue to them is going to do well. So now the store owners have an incentive to tell their own Pokemon community, hey guys, use this token, use this platform, because they get rewarded. And the more business they bring through us, the more they're going to get. So that is the mechanism behind this Dragon token, because essentially what we want to happen, or we want to get to a stage where someone can walk into a Pokemon store in Seoul and say, here is a Korean Pikachu, slide it across the desk, get an NFT of Pikachu that they can then sell to, say, someone in Sao Paulo who can walk into a store and trade it in for a Portuguese Pikachu. And this could happen all within the hour. And effectively, we've not only teleported a card, but we've also translated it as well. And if we use a little bit of actuarial reserving, and we know how many Pikachu cards need to be on hand at each of these various stores, and ever so after, rebalance it and do a little bit of that, we could get to a situation where people can submit cards anywhere and redeem cards anywhere and trade with anybody over the internet. Now that's super, super cool, especially if you're a professional Pokemon player. So this was also so vital, going to these Pokemon tournaments, talking to professional players, because they're traveling around the world, a lot of them. So they can't carry all their Pokemon cards with them at all the time, because it's just taking up a lot of luggage space, and most of the time you only need 60 cards to play. But if a new set comes out or a new card becomes popularized, everyone then wants a specific card. Or not everyone will want that specific card, but some people might want this one, some people might want that one. They want to make maybe some changes. If they know that, hey, they can convert their entire Pokemon collection into NFTs, then they're basically traveling with their cards. They can go to these stores, exchange their NFTs for the actual cards, play the game, exchange those cards back at the end for NFTs, go to another destination, and rinse and repeat. That could potentially be an activity. And look, with Pokemon players, I know there are some that play with max rarity as a bit of a point of pride, but for a lot of, and I guess that's how Pokemon cards work, is you've got these max rarity, very, very valuable cards that, yes, you don't want to damage, you don't want to play with, but every single one of them has a common/uncommon or a single rare variety that is a lot cheaper, that it doesn't matter if they get a little bit lightly played or something like that. These are the cards that are meant to be used. And funnily enough, I actually think that is the sweet spot for Pokecoin, are the commons, the uncommons, and the single and double rares. The ultra rares, the special art rares, the hyper rares, then custodianship of an asset like that it's possible and we will get there. But I don't think that's our initial entry into the market. There's other our competitors, Courtyard.io and PSA/eBay are making a connection to do that. Like if you want to trade high value cards, there are other potential solutions, and they tend to be graded and they tend never to be played with. We're actually going after the playable cards, because what happens when you buy Pokemon packs is you open a Pokemon pack and you're hoping to get one of these special max rarity cards. Most of the time you don't, but you get 11 other cards that many people consider as bulk. And I've even seen some people throw it away. So I sell Pokemon cards at the karting track, and I'll see kids, they'll come in, they'll buy a pack of cards, they open the pack to see if they get a rare card. If they don't get a rare card, they throw the pack. They throw the pack away with the Pokemon cards. And I can't believe, because I'm someone, when I open up a pack of Pokemon cards, not only do I look at each card, but I read the little story, so I'll pick up, say, a Raichu card, and I'll read at the bottom, the little story says, if the electric pouches in its cheeks become fully charged, both ears will stand up straight. And it's like, this is a Raichu, card number 52 from Temporal Forces that is a common. It is a common, and I will read this card. I love the art. I think it's beautiful. In fact, it's in front of me. It's Raichu lying on his back on a grass hill in the sun. It's a gorgeous card. It's a common, but I love it. Okay, that's why it's literally on hand. I could read that for you. I've got another Raichu card here from the 151s collection, and it says, its tail discharges electricity into the ground, protecting it from getting shocked. So I read the cards, okay, even if they're not max rarity. These kids, they take them and they literally throw it away. And I was like, wait. And just the way people refer to these cards as bulk, I'm like, okay, one man's trash is another man's treasure. This is where I start thinking. So imagine if stores could offer a service to their big customers, their big collectors. They say, listen, we're selling you, 10 boxes of Pokemon cards. That's like 360 booster packs, which means you're probably going to have bulk of 3,500 cards. What do you do with it? Why don't you bring those 3,500 cards back to us, and we'll buy them from you from within Pokecoins. So let's say those 3,500 cards are worth $100. Let's just say, making up numbers here, just for illustration purposes. So they bring 3,500 cards, market value is $100, the bulk, for that quantity. It'll probably be a little bit less. But the store owner will give them 100 Pokecoin. So store owner gives them 100 Pokecoin, and the store owner takes that 3,500 cards. The store owner then sends us a message saying, hey, we got 3,500 cards. Here's the CSV file. We got 20 Mews, 5 Pikachus, 3 EVs. They give us that whole entire list. We take that list and we mint NFTs based on the cards that our partner has received. We then take all of those cards and we mix them with a bunch of special art rares, hyper rarity. A small amount, it's mainly the bulk. But we do mix in some really high valuable cards as well that, we either source for dollars, or if we can with Pokecoin, mix it in, and then we send it all to this NFT Lucky Packet smart contract, which Third Web has got a tutorial on how to do it. It's not like, we're reinventing the stuff ourselves. We're following tutorials on how to do it. And then what you have is this NFT that when somebody sends a Pokecoin to it, it emits a random NFT back at them. So you send in a Pokecoin, you could get a common Raichu, or you could get the special illustration rare Pikachu, that's worth $500 or something crazy like that. And that essentially is the game. So people can basically cash in their bulk for Pokecoins. They can either use those Pokecoins themselves on our website or sell it on a decentralized exchange or wherever it is, turn it into cash if they want. But at the end of the day, the person who's got that coin goes in and can buy these NFTs. Now, they're most likely not going to get the card that they want. So that's why we have the marketplace. They can trade them, they can sell them, they can do whatever they need. Or they might say, hey, I want this card myself. Go to one of the stores that that's closest to them. And because, like I say, we're talking about billions of cards that have been printed, and we're mainly dealing with the playable cards out at the moment now, which has got a high circulation rate. So even if the cards were submitted in, like I say, Sol, someone in Sao Paulo could probably redeem it, because if we've got a store owner that bought bulk in, 2 or 3 days ago, it's very, very likely that the card that they're redeeming is contained in their library or their storage as well. We'll do a little bit of actuarial calculations to ensure that, statistically, you're 99.9% likely to get the card at any store that you go to that has partnered with us, by making sure certain minimums are purchased and all these type of things. But what we also want to potentially do is allow let's say you get the Pokemon card as your NFT and you like it and you want to keep it. You don't want to trade it and you don't want to redeem it. We want to allow you to stake it. And by staking it, you're going to generate a token. And with that token, you can use it, that feeds back into that whole airdrop ecosystem that we had, that would eventually result in more Pokecoin, which will allow you to get more Pokemon cards. So in effect, if you get a whole bunch of Pokemon cards, you can stake them, come back in a while, and essentially take that yield and open more Pokemon packs. So you could have, let's say you have 100 Pokemon cards staked. Every year you could be generating another 10 Pokemon cards, and of course you can see there's quite a lot of tokenomics to keep my financial brain busy, to make sure that because our rule will be, for every Pokecoin that is minted, we must have a physical Pokemon card as an NFT backing it. So every Pokecoin represents a physical card that is also represented as an NFT, and the Pokecoins can be exchanged for the NFTs, and the NFTs can be exchanged for the Pokecards, and of course the Pokecards are bought for with the Pokecoin. So we've got our little triangle ecosystem that is essentially happening. But when you're buying that NFT, like I say, you're not just getting the Pokemon card, you're getting the dopamine hit as well. And we want to also introduce things where, let's say you collect, so in Pokemon cards, we're currently in something known as the Scarlet and Violet era. So this has been going since, I think, 2023. And every 3 to 4 months, sometimes even there's special sets, but they will release these sets. And in a set, you're looking at around 150, 250 cards per set. On our site, we want to tell people, hey, you've collected 50% of the set, 10% of that set, 3% for that set. And then have competitions and rewards for the first person to complete the set, or for the first 10 people to complete the set. They either get bonus tokens or sealed product, or we'll think of something that is appropriate for that accomplishment. But that then tells people, like, hey, I actually need to go out and buy these common cards because I need one of each in order to complete my set, and I can stake them as well. So we want to shift that entire collector's mindset to becoming virtual. And by reducing all that friction and the communication barriers and all the ugliness and the drama around physical trading, we believe not only that people are going to trade a lot more frequently, but we believe more people are going to come in and start trading and getting involved in it. And it's this idea of being able to redeem the card at any stage that I think is just going to give it that, that magical essence, even though I don't anticipate most users to redeem. I think a lot of users will see the benefit of having the Pokemon card as an NFT. In fact, I think the NFT cards will trade at a premium to the Pokemon, the physical cards. So a physical Raichu might cost, say, 10 US cents, but a NFT Raichu of the same card might trade at $1. And okay, maybe that's a little bit excessive, but let's say 50 cents. But that additional amount is going to represent the fact that it's a lot more tradable. You don't have any cost of carry. You've got access to this whole distribution. Like, I think the NFT will be more valuable than the physical asset, which is kind of crazy. It's quite a crazy concept to get around. And of course, I'll only be really proven right or wrong when this thing gets up and running. But essentially, yeah, that is the business model. It's not just an NFT marketplace, but it's this global distribution. Now, we're gonna build up our team, and there's 2 people that I want to get on board with the team. I've chatted to them, they're eager. In fact, even during this coffee break that I had for this podcast, one of them was, sending me a message asking for some updates. How's the investing fundraising going was the question. Because they're eager to join, because these are guys that are traveling the world. They're the top players in the Middle East, South African region. So they're traveling the world, playing Pokemon at various tournaments, from Brazil. Then that's I think it's been Birmingham, then it's been Rio, then there's going to be Brisbane and Australia. Like, they're literally traveling all around the world. And at these Pokemon tournaments, store owners are there. All the store owners come because, hey, it's the big Pokemon event, it's the big convention. They've either got a little mini store set up themselves, or they're just there for networking. Some of them are even playing the game. So there are these hotspots where you can talk to all the store owners, sometimes in a country or definitely within a city, at the same time. Like, it's like, wow, what better way to do business than at these Pokemon conventions. So one of the guys that's really keen to join, top player in the Middle East South African region, he could be perfectly poised to have those initial discussions, chat about the idea, because it is a complex idea. It is an idea that you need diagrams and everything like that to fully explain and to comprehend. But if you can have those initial conversations at these various store owners, and like I say, every 2 weeks he's in another country, I think we could build up a network of 500 stores in 500 different cities. It's not as difficult as it might have been for a completely new product or for something different. It's kind of like our little silver bullet is knowing this Pokemon community, how the whole gaming works, this access to these distribution system. And like I say, if we can incentivize the store owners and reward them and make them essentially profit sharing partners in this platform, it's going to contribute to its success. So I think, let's maybe wrap up this podcast now. The reason for doing it is just because my voice is sore. I think the 1 hour initial and the 30-minute phone call and now another thing here, and we still, it's only turned 12 o'clock on a Wednesday. It's a lot of talking to have done in the morning. But I think maybe let me just end it off by talking about Pokemon Pocket. So Pokemon themselves have realized, hey, there's a market to be made in the virtual space. I think with everyone talking to them about NFTs, they're like, well, let's make something virtual. They've made Pokemon Pocket. They haven't put it on the blockchain yet. So I think that's their first mistake. And as of, look, it's still very, very new. But you can't even trade these cards between your friends. Now, already they've got something like 33 million downloads since November. So within 3 months, 33 million downloads. And their monthly revenue is $200 million. And that $200 million is because people are buying these virtual packs. And these virtual cards aren't backed by physical cards like ours are going to be. You can't trade them with your friends like you're going to be able to do with ours. And you can't, redeem them from various stores. So we really feel like we've built something better than Pokemon Pocket. But Pokemon Pocket has validated this concept that people want to trade things virtually. And like I say, $200 million a month, and we feel like we've created a better product to them. So let's see. I'm excited about this project. My email address, if you do want to chat to me about the project specifically, is mj@pokecoinnft.com. So that's mj@pokecoinnft.com. If you do, if you're an investor and you want to set up a follow-up meeting and ask me any questions that I maybe didn't address in this very, very long podcast. But without further ado, I know we've gone over 1.5 hours, so let's wrap it up and say, thanks everyone for listening. I'll see you next week for another episode where I think, we'll return back to the theory, because this was a lot of practical and background. We'll return to the theory of business for our Actuarial Business podcast. Cheers, everyone, and hope you have a great day.
You are listening to the Actuarial Business Podcast. with MJ, the fellow actuary. MJ, the fellow actuary.